Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're tackling Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday today.
This is a good one.
Yeah, you guys really threw down the gauntlet with this one. Well, the goal is to
Help cut through.
yeah, cut through it all,
Yes.
right? I mean, it's a dense book and there's a
Right.
lot there. But you know what? I think the core
message is.
Yeah, the core thing is how this thing we call ego can really trip us up.
Yeah, at any stage.
At any stage, yeah. Whether we're just starting out or we've already hit some, milestones.
Yeah.
It's like this sneaky saboteur.
Right from the beginning, Holiday kind of throws us right into the fire. He talks about his own experiences.
Oh, yeah, he gets personal right away.
Super personal.
Yeah, dropping out of college, all those mentors he had early on.
Yeah, you can tell he was on, the fast track.
Total fast track. But then he has this realization, right? He's like, wait a minute, I've been crafting this narrative about myself.
And it's all, self-aggrandizing.
Totally. Like leaving out all the messy parts.
Yeah. Yeah, the struggles, the failures, like we all have.
Exactly. But we don't like to talk about those. And that's, I think, where the danger lies, right?
Big time. It's so easy to, especially when you have some success, you kind of
Airbrush it.
airbrush your own history.
You're like, look at me, I'm amazing.
But that inflated sense of self,
Yeah.
it can be a real problem.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it can lead to burnout, to relationship issues.
Stop growing.
Yeah, you're not really growing. It's like you're stuck in this, self-made bubble. So how do we pop that bubble?
Well, he uses this analogy from Aristotle,
Oh, yeah, from ethics.
the warped piece of wood.
Oh, that's such a good one.
It's so visual.
It is, right. It's like, okay, you've got this warped piece of wood. You gotta, straighten it out.
And that's how we need to approach our own lives, trying to be more,
Straight.
less warped, less driven by ego.
Less ego-driven, right. And this is especially hard, I think, in today's world. I mean, with social media and everything, it's like ego amplification central.
It's everywhere you look. Self-promotion, validation seeking. It's like the norm now.
It's almost like it's expected. You're not anybody unless you're out there.
Tooting your own horn.
Yeah, tooting your own horn constantly.
And Holiday even talks about this, his own struggles with social media.
He talks about being addicted.
Yeah, he's like, I'm spending all this time on this stuff, and I'm not actually doing the work.
Yeah, it's a distraction. It's a huge distraction.
And I think that's something so many of us can relate to, How much time are we all spending?
Curating our online image.
Yeah, instead of actually, building something real.
Right, and that's where Holiday brings in this idea of silence as a strength.
Oh, I love this part.
Yeah. He quotes Kierkegaard.
Yes, that mere gossip anticipates real talk.
And to express what is still in thought weakens action by forestalling it.
Whoa.
Right? Let your actions speak for themselves.
Don't get caught up in all the noise.
Exactly. Focus on the work, not the hype.
But that's easier said than done, right?
Okay.
So how do we actually, put that into practice?
Well, that's where this whole idea of adopting a student mindset comes in.
I love that concept. Always be learning.
Yeah. No matter how much you've accomplished, no matter how successful you become.
There's always more to learn.
Always. And it's about being open to feedback, to mentorship, even if it's humbling.
Because sometimes you need that humbling experience to knock your ego down a peg or two.
He tells that story about Metallica, the band. They actually kicked out a member because his ego was getting in the way.
Oh, yeah, he wasn't a student of the band's sound anymore.
Right. And they were like, you're out. And that's Metallica. Talk about commitment to the craft.
It shows you that even in a field where, ego is almost expected,
Yeah, it's almost part of the image.
you still need that humility to keep growing.
To keep learning. So a student mindset is crucial, but then Holiday takes it a step further with this idea of the canvas strategy.
Ooh, yeah, this is a good one.
It's like, instead of always trying to be in the spotlight yourself, you're focusing on supporting others, clearing paths for them.
It seems counterintuitive.
It totally does.
Right.
Right. You're like, wait a minute, shouldn't I be promoting myself? But Holiday argues that,
By helping others succeed, you're actually
yeah, you're creating a path for yourself.
a path for yourself.
It's almost like,
Like you're building up good karma.
yeah, and he gives this example of Bill Belichick, the legendary football coach.
Oh, yeah, the Patriots coach.
Yeah, and he started out by, mastering the super unglamorous task of analyzing film, hours and hours of film.
The grunt work.
The grunt work. And his insights were often attributed to more senior coaches. He was fine with that.
He was playing the long game.
Totally. He was learning, contributing.
And it paid off Big time.
Big time. So it's not just about what you achieve, it's how you achieve it, right?
Absolutely. And this leads us to another really important point that Holiday makes, the difference between passion and purpose. You hear so much about follow your passion.
Yeah, follow your passion, do what you love. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. But he actually pushes back on that a bit.
He does. He's like, hold on a second.
Yeah, he shares this anecdote about Eleanor Roosevelt where someone said something about her being passionate, and
She rejected the label. She was like, no, 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 it's not about passion.
she was all about purpose
Yeah.
and realism.
Yes. So how do we differentiate, right? Passion versus purpose. What's the difference?
Well, he gives this really helpful distinction. Like, passion is often expressed as, I am so passionate about, you know.
Yeah, like it's all about me and my feelings.
Exactly. But purpose, he says, it's more like, I must do this. I was put here to accomplish this. It's about action, commitment.
It's bigger than you.
It's bigger than you. And he also talks about the importance of realism,
Okay, so what does that mean? Realism in terms of purpose.
being able to detach from your emotions a bit, gain some perspective, being strategic.
Oh, so it's not just blindly following your passion wherever it leads.
Right. It's about having a clear direction.
Then wing where you want to go.
Exactly. He uses this example of Martial.
Martial, the Roman poet.
Yeah. He was super talented, but he was also like dependent on these wealthy patrons for support.
So he had this tension, right?
Huge tension. He wanted to be this great poet, but he also had to,
Eat.
pay the bills.
I feel like that's so relevant for today. We've got all these big dreams, but
But the reality is you gotta
pay rent.
pay rent. And that's where Holiday reframes this piece of advice you hear all the time. Make other people look good.
Oh, yeah, that's classic career advice.
Right. But he's like, think of it as find canvases for other people to paint on.
Whoa.
Right. It's a totally different way of looking at it.
It's not about dimming your own light. It's about
And about contributing.
learning,
Right.
building relationships.
And ultimately, you'll benefit too.
Yeah, you're creating this ecosystem of success. Okay, so we've talked about the student mindset, the Canvas strategy, but then Holiday goes on to, like, this whole reality check section. He talks about entitlement.
Oh, and self-absorption.
Yeah,
He uses the example of General McClellan.
General McClellan, the Civil War guy.
Yes.
I vaguely remember him from history class.
Well, he was brilliant on paper. Like, West Point grad, had some early victories in battle. But he was so full of himself.
Oh, no.
He was constantly battling imaginary enemies, congratulating himself.
For things he hadn't even done.
Yeah, it was all about his ego.
And what happened?
He basically froze. He became paralyzed by his own self-absorption.
Oh, wow.
And it cost lives, thousands of lives.
That's heavy.
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder of how dangerous ego can be, not just for you, but
But for everyone around you.
exactly.
And it makes you think, right? How often are we letting our own ego dictate our actions, even in small ways?
All the time.
Yeah, right. Like it's that little voice in your head that's like, oh, I'm so important or I'm so special.
Holiday quotes Anne Lamott. She calls it the KFKD station.
KFKD.
Yeah, it stands for K-fucked, constantly playing in our heads.
Oh, that's good.
Right. That inflated sense of self-importance. It's like we're all walking around.
Starring in our own movie.
Exactly.
But that's not reality. And Holiday reminds us that even people who achieved incredible things, they understood the danger of pride.
He talks about Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, yeah, Ben Franklin, the original self-improvement guru.
Exactly. He was constantly battling his own pride. He knew how destructive it could be.
So even someone like Ben Franklin, right? One of the founding fathers, super accomplished.
Still had to work on keeping his ego in check.
That's humbling.
It is. It's a good reminder for all of us.
Okay, so we've seen how ego can mess with our aspirations, how it can trip us up even when we achieve success. But
what about when we actually, hit it big?
yeah, like what happens when we reach those, like, I've made it moments?
Can we manage ego even then?
That's a great question. And that's where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive.
We've been talking about how ego can really mess with us when we're striving for something, when we're on that upward trajectory.
Yeah, like reaching for those goals.
Exactly. But Holiday also dives into what happens when we actually get knocked down a few pegs.
Okay, so not just when we fail, but when something really shakes us up.
Yeah, like those moments that bring us to our knees.
Those brought to our knees moments. I kind of associate that with really negative experiences, loss, failure.
It's interesting you say that because Holiday actually suggests that even positive events can have that effect.
Really? Like what?
Well, he uses the example of getting married.
Okay. Getting married. How is that bringing you to your knees?
Think about it. It's supposed to be this joyous occasion, right? But it also comes with a whole set of new responsibilities, compromises, challenges.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And those things can force us to confront our own ego, our deeply held beliefs about ourselves and the world.
It's like that moment when you realize you're not the center of the universe anymore.
Exactly. There's another person's needs and desires to consider, and that can be a humbling experience.
Definitely humbling.
And Holiday argues that it's in those moments of humility when our ego is stripped away that we have the opportunity for real growth and transformation.
So it's not about avoiding those moments or trying to maintain this constant sense of control.
Nope. It's about embracing those experiences that challenge our ego and using them as opportunities for self-discovery and growth.
I like that. That's a good reframe.
And to illustrate this point, he shares a story about Vince Lombardi,
Wait, Lombardi, the legendary football coach.
the one and only. He was known for being tough, demanding, pushing his players to their absolute limits.
Yeah, he definitely had a reputation.
And he once said, "A team like men must be brought to its knees before it can rise again."
Wow, that's a powerful statement.
It is right. He understood that sometimes we need to hit rock bottom in order to realize our true potential.
So it's not about avoiding failure or pretending it doesn't happen.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that failure is an inevitable part of life.
And choosing to use those experiences as opportunities to learn, to grow, to become even stronger.
And that's where managing our ego becomes so crucial. Because ego can make us afraid to take risks, to put ourselves out there, to embrace the possibility of failure.
It can make us play it safe all the time.
Exactly. We become complacent. We settle for mediocrity because we're too afraid of looking bad or making mistakes.
But we're also missing out on those moments of growth, those breakthroughs that happen when we push ourselves outside of our comfort zones.
And Holiday uses a really interesting example to illustrate this point. He talks about Bill Walsh, the coach who turned the San Francisco 49ers into a dynasty.
Oh yeah, Bill Walsh, another legendary coach. What's the story?
Well, in his first year coaching the team, he finished with a dismal record. 2 wins and 14 losses.
Ouch. That's got to be tough for a coach with his reputation.
It would have been easy for him to give in to despair, to blame others for the team's failures, or just give up on his vision.
But he didn't.
He didn't. Instead, he used that experience as an opportunity to learn to refine his strategies and to build a stronger team culture.
So he didn't let that initial setback define him. He kept going.
Exactly. He focused on what he could control, and he never lost sight of his ultimate goal.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest, as they say, is history. The 49ers went on to win multiple Super Bowls under his leadership.
That's amazing. It shows how resilience and a willingness to learn from our mistakes can lead to incredible success.
And it requires a certain level of humility. We need to be willing to admit when we're wrong, to learn from our mistakes, to seek out feedback and guidance from others.
It's about recognizing that no matter how talented or successful we become, there's always more to learn, more to grow, and more to achieve.
And ego can often stand in the way of that growth.
Yeah, it can make us defensive, closed off to new ideas, and resistant to feedback.
And Holiday argues that this is especially dangerous when we're in positions of leadership.
Oh, I can see that. When we let our ego dictate our actions as leaders, it not only harms us personally, but it can also damage our teams, our organizations, even our communities.
It creates a toxic environment.
It does. It's like that saying, a fish rots from the head down.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right. If the leader is ego-driven, it sets the tone for the entire organization.
And it prevents us from building trust, fostering collaboration, and empowering others to do their best work.
So we need to be mindful of how our ego might be impacting our leadership style.
Absolutely. We need to be willing to step back, to listen, to delegate, and to trust the people around us.
It's about recognizing that we don't have all the answers and that the best solutions often come from collaboration and shared learning.
So we've talked about how ego can impact our ability to handle failure and how it can affect our leadership style. But there's another area where ego can really trip us up, and that's in the digital age.
Oh yeah, the whole social media thing. It's like a breeding ground for ego.
It can be. It's so easy to get caught up in the curated perfection of online personas and start comparing ourselves to others.
And feeling like we're not good enough, not successful enough, not whatever enough.
Right. And that's where managing our ego becomes so crucial. It's about recognizing that social media often presents a distorted view of reality.
People are always putting their best foot forward online.
Exactly. They're highlighting their successes and downplaying their struggles, which creates a false sense of comparison and competition.
And then we start feeling bad about ourselves because we're not living up to these unrealistic expectations.
Right. And Holiday reminds us that it's important to focus on our own journey, to define success on our own terms, and to avoid getting caught up in the endless cycle of online validation seeking.
It's about remembering that social media is just a highlight reel. It's not real life.
And that true fulfillment and happiness come from within, not from the number of likes or followers we have online.
It's about cultivating a sense of inner peace and self-worth that is not dependent on external validation.
Exactly. So be mindful of how you use social media and be aware of the potential impact it can have on your ego and your self-esteem.
It's a tool that can be used for good or for bad. It all depends on how we choose to use it.
And speaking of tools, Holiday also explores how ego can impact our creativity.
Oh, that's interesting. So ego can play a role in our creative pursuits.
It can. It's like a double-edged sword. On the one hand, a certain level of confidence and self-belief is necessary to put our work out into the world and pursue our creative passions.
Right. You got to believe in yourself to create something new.
Exactly. But on the other hand, ego can also lead to arrogance, perfectionism, and a fear of criticism.
Which can totally block our creative flow.
It can. It's like we become so afraid of making a mistake or being judged that we end up stifling our own creativity.
So how do we find that balance? How do we cultivate the confidence we need to create without letting our ego get in the way?
Holiday suggests that it's about focusing on the work itself, rather than on our ego or our need for recognition.
So it's not about seeking validation for our creativity, but about the joy of creation itself.
Exactly. It's about approaching our creative pursuits with a sense of playfulness, curiosity, and a willingness to experiment without fear of judgment.
It's about remembering why we create in the first place, the joy of expression, the satisfaction of bringing something new into the world, the connection we feel with others through our art.
And it's about recognizing that creativity is a process, not a destination. There will be times when we feel inspired and our work flows effortlessly, and there will be times when we feel blocked, frustrated, unsure of ourselves.
The key is to keep showing up, keep creating, keep experimenting, and keep learning from our experiences.
Don't let your ego convince you that you're not good enough or that your work isn't worthy of being shared.
It's about embracing the journey, the ups and downs, the successes and the failures, and using those experiences to fuel our creativity and push ourselves to grow and evolve as artists.
And to do that, we need to let go of our ego's need for control, embrace uncertainty, and be open to new possibilities.
So we've talked about how ego can impact our ability to handle failure, our leadership style, our relationship with social media, and even our creative pursuits. But there's one more crucial element that Holiday explores, and that's the relationship between ego and our sense of purpose.
Ah, yes. This is where we start to see how ego can not only hinder our personal growth, but also prevent us from making a meaningful contribution to the world.
So it's not just about us and our own individual journey. It's about something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. Holiday argues that true purpose is about something larger than ourselves, something that connects us to something bigger than our own individual needs and desires.
It's about finding that sense of meaning that drives us to make a positive impact on the world.
And to do that, we often need to step outside of our own ego's limited perspective and embrace a more expansive view of our place in the world.
It's about recognizing that we are all interconnected and that our actions have ripple effects that extend far beyond ourselves.
So how do we find that sense of purpose? How do we connect to something larger than ourselves and use our lives to make a positive difference?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
It is. And it's a question that each of us must answer for ourselves. But Holiday offers some guidance. He suggests that we start by asking ourselves some fundamental questions. What are our values? What are we passionate about? What are the problems in the world that we feel called to address?
So it's about taking the time for introspection, for self-reflection, and for honest exploration of what truly matters to us.
Exactly. And it's about being willing to let go of our ego's need for certainty and control and embrace the uncertainty of the journey.
Because finding our purpose isn't always a straight line. It's often messy and unpredictable.
It is. It often involves twists and turns, setbacks, and challenges that can push us to our limits.
But it's in those moments of challenge, those times when we're forced to confront our own limitations and step outside of our comfort zones, that we often discover our true strength and resilience.
And it's in those moments that we have the opportunity to connect to something larger than ourselves, to find meaning in our struggles, and to use our experiences to make a positive impact on the world.
So it's not about avoiding the tough stuff, it's about leaning into it and using those experiences to fuel our growth and our purpose.
This has been a really insightful exploration of how ego can impact various aspects of our lives, from our ability to handle failure to our leadership style, our relationship with social media, our creative pursuits, and even our sense of purpose.
We've covered a lot of ground in this second part of our deep dive into ego is the enemy, but I'm curious, what does Holiday suggest we do about all of this? Are there specific strategies we can implement to manage our ego and prevent it from sabotaging our goals and our well-being?
There are. He offers a whole toolkit of practical strategies, and that's what we'll be diving into in the final part of our deep dive. We'll explore those tools and how we can use them to live a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
Okay, so we really dug deep into how ego can show up in our lives, and sometimes not in a good way.
Definitely not.
But what I'm really eager to hear about is what can we actually do about it? Does Holiday give us a game plan?
He does. And it's not about some big, complicated system. It's actually very practical.
Oh, good, because I need practical.
Right, like things we can start using today.
Yeah, today.
So one of the most basic things, and he emphasizes this throughout the book, is just constantly reminding ourselves, ego is the enemy.
Sounds simple.
It is simple, but that's kind of the point.
So it's like a mantra almost.
Yeah, like a little reminder you can use when you feel your ego starting to take over.
Like when I catch myself thinking I'm the most important person in the room.
Exactly. Or when you're looking for validation or making excuses for yourself, that's when you got to hit the brakes and be like, wait a minute, ego's the enemy.
Okay, I like that. So it's about developing that self-awareness that we talked about.
Yes, exactly. Being able to recognize those ego-driven patterns and then making a conscious choice to do something different.
But how do we actually make those different choices? Like, what are the alternatives?
That's where some of Holiday's other strategies come in. One of the big ones is focusing on the process rather than the outcome.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that before. But I think it's easy to get caught up in wanting to achieve, wanting to win, wanting to be seen as successful.
It's so easy. Our culture is obsessed with results. But when we're fixated on those external things,
We lose sight of the journey.
exactly,
Yeah.
and we miss out on the joy and the learning that happens along the way.
It's like being so focused on reaching the destination that you forget to enjoy the ride.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
And Holiday argues that when we shift our focus from what am I going to get out of this to what can I contribute?
Okay, that's a big shift.
It is, but it's powerful. Because when we focus on the process, on the effort we're putting in, on the value we're creating, the outcome often takes care of itself.
So it's about finding satisfaction in the work itself, not just in the rewards.
Right. It's about doing the work because you love it, because it's meaningful to you, not because you're chasing some external validation.
Which can be hard in our culture, right?
Yeah.
We're constantly bombarded with messages about what we should be achieving, what we should be striving for.
It's relentless. And that's where another one of Holiday's strategies comes in, practicing gratitude.
Gratitude. Okay, I hear that word a lot. But how does it actually help us manage our ego?
When we're focused on what we lack, on what we haven't achieved, on what other people have that we don't, our ego tends to run wild.
It's like it feeds on that negativity.
It does. It thrives on comparison, envy, a sense of scarcity.
Hmm.
But when we practice gratitude, we shift our focus to what we already have, to the abundance in our lives, to the good that already exists.
So it's about choosing to focus on the positive rather than dwelling on the negative.
Exactly. It's not about ignoring the challenges or pretending that everything is perfect. It's about recognizing that even in the midst of difficulties, there are always things to be grateful for.
It's like choosing to see the glass half full instead of half empty.
And that shift in perspective can make a huge difference in how we experience the world and how we deal with challenges.
So gratitude is not just some fluffy, feel-good practice. It's actually a powerful tool for managing our ego.
And it's not just about our internal state either. When we approach life with a sense of gratitude, it impacts how we interact with others. We become more appreciative, more generous, more forgiving.
So it's like a ripple effect of positivity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got ego as the enemy, as our mantra. We've got focusing on the process, practicing gratitude. What else?
What other tools do we have in our ego-busting toolkit?
Holiday talks about the importance of asking for help. This can be a really tough one for people with big egos.
Oh, for sure. I know. I've struggled with that, feeling like I need to have it all figured out.
Right. It's that fear of looking weak or incompetent. But Holiday argues that asking for help is actually a sign of strength.
Interesting. How so?
It takes humility to admit that you don't have all the answers, that you need support from others. And it also opens you up to new perspectives and possibilities.
That's true. When I've been willing to ask for help, I've often been surprised by the solutions that come from unexpected places.
Exactly. And it strengthens your relationships too, because you're showing people that you trust them, that you value their input.
So asking for help is not just about getting the job done, it's also about connection and collaboration.
Exactly. And that leads to another strategy. Holiday talks about being a contributor, not just a consumer.
Ooh, I like that distinction.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in the mindset of what can I get? But when we shift our focus to what can I give, we tap into a much deeper sense of purpose and fulfillment.
It's like that idea of leave the campground better than you found it.
Yes, it's about making a positive impact on the world around us. And when we focus on contributing, we often find that we benefit as well.
It's like that rising tide lifts all boats thing.
Exactly. So to wrap up all those strategies we've talked about, remembering that ego is the enemy, focusing on the process, practicing gratitude, asking for help, and being a contributor.
These are all powerful tools for keeping our ego in check.
And they're things we can practice every day, in every area of our lives.
This deep dive into ego is the enemy has been amazing. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of how ego works and how it can impact my life.
Me too. And the great thing is that we can all start using these strategies right away.
No matter where we are on our journey.
Exactly. It's a lifelong process, but it's one that's well worth the effort.
Because when we learn to manage our ego, we unlock our true potential, and we can start creating the life we truly want.
And making a positive impact on the world around us.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Ego is the Enemy. We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have.
And that you'll keep these strategies in mind as you navigate your own journey.
Until next time.